bit of housekeeping before we start. Obviously, this meeting will be recorded, but I would like to point out that item 7 on today's agenda is an update report on DG1. It had initially been thought that this report would be a general update on the position at DG1. Now I have to advise members that the report that members will receive today includes details of the legal proceedings, and for this reason I would confirm that the matter will have to be taken on legal advice as an exempt item of business in line with Local Government Act 1973, Section 12. Once we have had our input in this, there will be a statement to be issued of the matters that can go into the public domain. So that's just for information. Could the Sederunt and apologies, please?
14 members present. Apologies from 14 members present. Apologies from Councillor Gilroy, Councillor McGregor, and Councillor Stitt.
Thank you. Could I have any declarations of interest? Councillor Prentice.
Thanks, Chair. In view of a very close family involvement with a member of the family who actually is one of the few people within the stewardship CLD department, I'll be declaring an interest in item 5.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just declare an interest in item 6, which is the response to the MOD on the submarine dismantling project. I work for Magnox, but as they don't actually own the site, I will be taking part in the debate.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Geddes.
Thanks, Chair. I would welcome guidance from the governance officer because my partner's son-in-law is a member, senior member of TLD staff. I would certainly want the interest noted, but my question would be, while it's my decision ultimately, Chair, my question would be, does that preclude me, as it were, from active consideration of item 5?
Advice, as always, Chairman, through you to the member would be, as he correctly says, ultimately his decision. I've previously given a member advice that given the financial factor, the close family interest, the advice would be that you may wish to consider removing yourself from the chamber on that occasion.
So in other words, I will regrettably have to remove myself from the chamber.
Thank you very much, Mr. Geddes. Any further declarations? Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Just a family member in this department as well, but I'll still sit through. It doesn't affect anything on the agenda today.
Councillor McClellan.
I have a family member that works for CCS but not CLD, so I won't be removing myself.
And welcome Councillor McClellan to the meeting. He's replacing Councillor Collins in the short term. As welcoming Councillor McClellan to the meeting is replacing Councillor Collins in the short term. We move on now. Minutes of the meeting 27th of January 2015. Happy to approve. Thank you.
Record your absence, member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 4, Community Customer Services Revenue Monitoring Report. Director.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Members of the monitoring report before them, they'll see that we are currently projecting an overspend of £321,000. We are working hard to look at ways of bringing the budget in on balance. I'm not going to make excuses. We have got an overspend. We've got a number of underspends as well as overspends, but the balance is a £321,000 overspend. Just some background, if I may, Chairman. We've had a succession of restructures over the past 4 years within CCS, and unfortunately the budget didn't keep in pace with the changes in staffing, and a number of historic pressures have arisen which were not identified within the current budget. We've undertaken a significant amount of work in the past year to align budgets with particular reference to staffing. Year-on-year savings have been delivered, We've had delays in the implementation of some measures, particularly in relation to integration of libraries and libraries registration and CCS, and that has created some difficulties where you budget for a saving at the beginning of the year and the building requires adaptation and the staff required to remain, or indeed you're required to use casual staff to cover areas, that does result in a budget pressure. We're looking at that. The delivery of the Commonwealth Youth Summit, which I think everybody would agree was a huge success, we came under considerable pressure to provide, as time went on, more than we originally anticipated. There is an overspend on that, but we're looking at that at the moment. We are, and I'm not very popular, but I have imposed tight controls on recruitment over the last 12 months. And the monitoring reports are now providing what I consider to be a reliable outturn forecast. Managers recently received this month's budget monitoring reports, and they have been asked to take them away and go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. We accept that there are areas that require improvement, but we are working at that as a management team, and I'm confident that projected overspend will be reduced, if not completely eradicated, by the end of the current financial year, and that we will go forward into next financial year in CCS in a better position. We are now in a position, as I said, where we know exactly where all the staff are, and we're looking at taking that forward. There are issues affecting the staff, particularly in relation to the use of what we call casual employees. That's where, for example, if a leisure attendant is unable to attend a swimming pool, you can't just leave a gap on the swimming pool banks or whatever they call them. You've got to put somebody there for health and safety reasons. We also had a situation, I think it was particularly highlighted in the Upper Annandale area, where because of staff illness, etc., we had to fill in blanks where it was necessary to ensure that facilities didn't finish up being closed because there was nobody there to operate them. So we are moving forward. I'm happy to answer questions. I've got Colin Holmes, who's my business manager here, who will be able to go into the detail if any members have any detailed questions. If we can't answer the detail, we'll undertake to give you, all members, a written response to any question that we can't answer today. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, questions? Councillor Geddes?
Yes, sir. Paragraph 3.6, and Mr. Hazel has alluded to it, talking about the employment of casual staff, etc., and the hours of work that they're allocated. And in fact, reference is made in paragraph 3.6 to use of casual staff and additional hours overtime during 14-15 being higher than anticipated. My question there, sir, first of all, would be, why is it higher than anticipated? And there's an ancillary question, with your leave, Chair. How many of the staff that we employ in this department have, and I'm thinking particularly of casual staff, but not exclusively, have in fact contracted hours detailed in their contracts? Thanks, Chair.
Insofar as the use of casuals is concerned, we had difficulties, particularly in relation to the integration situation. We have had difficulties in relation to leisure and sport, where we appear to have had additional sickness. The vast majority of the casual staff have got a contract which specifies that they will work the hours that they require or we require them to work. I don't have the detailed number, unless Colin does, of the number of casual staff we have. Have you got that, Colin?
If I may, the way that we deal with casuals is because casuals may work on no hours over the course of the year, or may work lots. We deal with casuals on the basis of measuring the budget against casuals. So for CCS, there's a 1.2 million budget against casuals, and that's closely monitored in terms of how that's being allocated. Obviously, in terms of the nature of services that we provide with leisure and sport facilities, with libraries, we have minimum staffing numbers to actually maintain those. So for covering annual leave, for covering sickness absence, or additional events, we do have an operational need to use casual staff. So I don't have FTE figures in terms of casuals. They're obviously on, by nature of casuals, they're on sort of 0 hours contract. I could tell you how many people, I could seek how many people we've got who are on casuals, but we can provide extra information if that's what you require.
I'm grateful to Mr Haswell and Mr Holmes, but did Mr Holmes, if my hearing is correct, might use the term 0 hours contracts? Because that, being quite frank about it, Chair, that's the thrust of my question. And I would hope, for obvious reasons, that this authority is not participating in the process of using 0 hours contracts.
I think the terminology which Mr Holmes used may not have been absolutely correct. I checked legally, this council does not employ anyone on a 0 hours contract. We have a number of casual staff who will come in, for example, to run Agnew Park events on Agnew Park. They're given a contract for 3 months or 4 months. We have people who volunteer, come forward, and they know that they are not on a 0 hours contract. They are a casual employee, which the council calls on as and when necessary. I was very careful when I took over CCS to check and make sure that we didn't employ people on 0 hours contracts. We do not do that. I can only say that we do have people who we call on from time to time to be employed by the council. Those people have a formal contract with the council. The vast majority of people know, in terms of casuals, when they're going to be employed. It's normally in the summertime and things like that.
Yeah, that's helpful, sir, and I really am grateful to Mr Haswell for the assurance. I think it would probably be helpful, if all 47 members, were given the appropriate briefing in that regard, put it in member SharePoint or whatever, Chair. I think that, because this is an emotive issue, obviously. With your leave, sir, there was also another issue that I would like, to take up in the back of what Mr Haswell said earlier. He was talking about tight controls over recruitment. Now, that is commendable and laudable. I have no problems with that. But, we move on from there, Chair, to the concept of vacancy management. And I often feel that that's a euphemism, as it were, for, members of staff, who are off or posts or become vacant for whatever reason. And what ultimately happens is that, the remaining members of staff are asked, in fact, to pick up the slack, for want of a better term, Chair. Now, at the last meeting of the Joint Safety Committee, this issue got a fair old thrashing, for want of a better term, and all members who were there, as well as trade union representatives, were fundamentally of the view that, it really is not acceptable to continue to pursue this, perhaps with the rigour that we have been over the last several years, because inevitably it is causing stress problems and other health-related problems to those, in fact, who are in the situation. So again, with your leave, Chair, as always, I would be grateful if Mr Haswell would perhaps be allowed to respond to that comment.
I think we ensure that if someone is off on long-term sick leave, if it's a short-term, we make use of casual staff. If it's long-term, where it's necessary, we will backfill. We will ensure that happens. I think what I mean by staff monitoring, careful staff monitoring, is that as a management team, we look at every vacancy. So when someone resigns, we will look at their vacancy and say, do we require to fill that vacancy? Is there somehow we can do things different? Can we be more efficient? We do not automatically now, as happened in the past, whenever somebody went off to pastures new or retired, that were automatically, there was a backfill done. We have a tighter control on that. And I'm sorry, sir, I can't make an apology for that. I've got to actually manage the budgets. And part of my problem is that in the past, if a member of staff moved on somewhere else, there was an automatic assumption that the post would be filled, whether it was a post that was required or not. And we've discovered that in a number of areas where people were employed on to do, for example, a project, a temporary project, and I discovered that they are now on a permanent contract. And when the project finishes, that member of staff remains in situ. And that's what's happened year on year for a number of years now, and we are actually reviewing the position and perhaps putting tighter management controls in, rather than hopefully we would not want to place any member of staff under stress, and we do have considerable controls within CCS. If a member of staff is suffering from stress, we do look at that very carefully.
Final, Chair, as I say, I'm grateful to you. I'm not asking Mr Haswell or anyone else for that matter to apologise. I think that's good control, as it were, and budgetary and establishment control that he's talking about. But I think there's got to be a sense of balance struck, Chair. And the very real concern, is in fact, and it was expressed to a significant degree at the last meeting of the Joint Safety Committee, is that there you know, we're getting to the stage now where we've stripped out so many posts, etc. We're managing so many vacancies, you know, to such an extent that it may very well be having an adverse, not to say deleterious effect on the health of the members of staff who are left to cope. That is the concern.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, just to follow on and perhaps on the same theme, and it was discussed at the Joint Safety Committee, and it's a matter of that we receive a report which does touch on health and safety, the stress levels that it does cause if indeed we are running understaffed, and I think that we should see that as an integral part of any report, and I think that, well, I don't think that was the advice that was given at the Joint Safety Committee, that indeed we do see a health and safety aspect attached to each and every report where it will affect or could affect staff. And in that respect, I would ask that that is included in the report, and that we have a report saying what the effect is on the staff that are left, notwithstanding that it seems to be covered by casual labour or casual workers, perhaps coming back from early retirement or whatever. To me, that still smacks of a zero contract, because I'm quite sure some of the casual workers will not be given a 3-month contract if they're backfilling. So I think there are issues in there for us in terms of zero contract. Can I turn to and I think that's covered in staff costs in 3.6 and again in 3.12 in respect of the staff costs and the effect it has on others. Can I turn to what Alex refers to as the cost of refurbishing and so forth? And in my opinion, we had what could be regarded as an adequate building in Sun Street, where there was a front desk, there was access by a revolving door and so forth, and we have stripped all of that out. And what we did in stripping it out, replaced it with a further front counter and quite frankly an automatic door. And to me, there didn't seem to be any improvement or any enhancement in the work that we did in Sun Street in terms of scarce resources, particularly with money. So in that respect, perhaps we could hear from Alex in terms of what benefit we gained from the refurbishment of Sun Street, where at one time there was a mezzanine floor referred to, and whether indeed we are still on target for that. Because as it appears just now, there has been very little benefit from what we have done. And my last point is that we have continually asked for a report to the area committee. I think that it is programmed in now in terms of the savings, and we've been waiting now, I think it's almost 2 years on that report, because it was in 2013 or 2013-14 and 14-15 on the savings that have been accrued, or indeed what we would may perceive as an overspend in those years on the integration and so forth and so on. So in terms, I'll find on 2.2, that the community, the recommendation seems to be that the community and customer service management team are currently progressing a range of measures to seek to ensure the avoidance of any budget overspending in the current financial year. Could we have from the director what the effect of this will be in trying to bring the budget into line? What indeed will be the effect of that?
There are 2 members who will understand this quip, sir. You've asked an awful lot of questions there, Councillor Scobie. Mr. Lang. I'll try and answer them all. If I don't get them all, please come back to me. Number 1, we have a report here before members. If you look at Appendix 1 on page 9 of 90, Appendix 2, sorry, it is. Libraries, customer services, and registrations integration. The saving in the current financial year was projected at 392,000. It's actually coming in at currently at 287,000. In terms of 0 hours contracts, I've already said to members, we do not issue 0 hours contracts. We do not expect people to sit at home all day, every day, and be called on to come and work for the council because they have a contract to do that with the council. That does not happen. We employ casual staff. We either employ them over a period of time to provide services in what are basically summer facilities, or we employ them on the basis that they understand that they will backfill in the event of sickness in facilities. We do not employ, other than within the council's policies, people who have retired. There isn't now a policy which was adopted by the Policy and Resources Committee some 8-10 months ago that we do not now employ people who have retired as casuals. That does not happen until after, I think members agreed a period of 6 months from memory. In terms of stress reports, we do regularly report to members the levels of stress. We are extremely conscious of stress on staff, including management staff. We do report that regularly if members are seeking a change in the council's normal policy in relation to issues. I'm quite happy to tell you exactly what effect any report that comes forward. This report has no effect on staff. This report is a report on a financial issue. Insofar as Sun Street Stranraer is concerned, yeah, I am aware that there is a report destined to go to area committees which will set out the costs of integration as against, the savings from integration as against the costs of the capital costs that were done as what were projected as spends to save. In actual fact, these are reported on a regular basis to Policy and Resources Committee, but I will unpick it and make sure that area committees get details as per the area. Insofar as Sun Street Stranraer is concerned, yes, we changed the modus operandi in Stranraer in accordance with decisions taken by members. We now have an integrated facility in what was formerly the library in Stranraer, now a community and customer services centre, where the public can go in and get access to computers, they go in and get access to revenues and benefits information, they can get a book, they can also get other information on all council services. We have refurbished slightly, and I say slightly, Sun Street Stranraer because it does require an awful lot more work done in it. We're going forward with the fewer but better buildings. What we now have in Sun Street Stranraer, instead of having one cadre of staff, we have got social work staff, we have got planning staff, we've got building control staff. We're shortly going to be moving environmental health staff from Ailsa House, which is up the road, and into Sun Street. So far, I think we've done away with several fairly large buildings in Stranraer, which the council no longer has the revenue costs of running. So yes, there were buildings which were potentially underutilised, in fact definitely underutilised in the past. We are now using better and fewer buildings, and that's always been the intention. So there will have to be money spent on these buildings as time goes on, because buildings do get old. Sun Street Stranraer was last refurbished just pre-Wigtown District Council going out of business, shall we say, and the heating system in Sun Street was installed in the early 90s. It's an electric heating system. It is no longer fit for purpose, and we are looking at that. So yes, we are refurbishing buildings, Councillor Scobie, but we are achieving savings in revenue terms, and also we're getting income from selling buildings that we no longer require.
Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, just to the last remark being made by Alex in terms of what I said was that there was, in my opinion, an adequate building already there in Sun Street, and the changes...
No, we're not here to debate that. We'll let me see this issue.
Absolutely, Chair, and that was my point to Mr. Caswell, that we've made all these changes with very little benefit in terms of the money we spent. Can I come, Chair, to the remark he made in terms, Alex made in respect of the appendix, or he didn't, in terms of the spending and savings in Appendix 1 under strategic housing and the commissioning, where the original budget was for 5187. There was a change made in that, which brought that up to the revised budget to 569, where the spend to the 31st of December was just below or just above 6139, which is reflecting an overspend of 19, which again is a lot more than to bring it into line at 5696. I did ask for the effect of the budget, and again I asked what the effect of this in trying to bring this into line when in December we were already at 6.1 plus million pounds.
Colin, can you specifically respond to that particular line? I think it's got to do with government grants or something like that, but could you?
I believe that the case with that specific figure is that strategic housing and commissioning have grants which come in and go out, so that there are adjustments over the course of the year, but the outturn position is forecast at a 19,000 underspend. So I don't have more detail than that to hand, but I believe that that's the case.
A lot of the budget depends on the ship and various grants that come in, and they're paid, a lot of them retrospectively, so the council actually bankrolls them. But we are projecting a 19,000 underspend on strategic housing, and Mr Lynch assures me that he's well on track for that, if not more.
Okay, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. I have to say I was really quite startled when I looked at the Commonwealth Youth Summit overspend. I mean, I don't know how on earth that can actually happen, and it hasn't been explained to us precisely how that and why that has happened. I'd like to know how that has happened. That's my first question. And the second question is that we all agreed the savings on communities, facilities review, and the integration of libraries. We agreed it. We've been told there have been delays, but it's not entirely clear to me why we have that level of delay, and we're told that in 313 that we're going to maximise the level of savings available in the current year and are being progressed. But we've agreed that savings, and I want to know exactly where it's coming from and what has happened.
Harry, are you able to respond on the Commonwealth Youth Summit?
Yeah,
first?
thanks, Chair. Councillor Maitland, obviously the Commonwealth Youth Summit was given as an opportunity to the Council at fairly short notice, which is understandable because of the circumstances. The Council made a decision that we wanted to host it, and with that came the real opportunity to get significant, not just national, but international profile out of it. And we had to take a somewhat leap of faith to ensure that if we take on that responsibility, we deliver it absolutely to the best of our abilities. One of the challenges we had when you're dealing with national partners who's obviously got their own governance requirements, etc., is that we had to work closely with them to ensure that as promoted partners, what they were wanting to get out of it was also delivered. Some of the challenges we had in terms of budget costs was down to catering, for example, that we couldn't confirm catering costs until we could confirm the exact number of guests from the various different categories over the whole weekend. So whilst an individual unit cost may be reasonably good value, if you multiply that by 300, 400, 500 people over a whole weekend, the costs soon mount up. There was also costs incurred in terms of attractions, other costs in terms of promotion and advertising, etc. I think CCS as a department had originally indicated that some of our service reserves would be used to offset this, but as previously reported to members, those reserves had to go to another part of the business before the books were fully settled with the Commonwealth Youth Summit. So I think, as I've tried to indicate in the report, the event itself, whilst it did create a budget pressure, I personally think it was too much of an opportunity not for us to take up, and I think there's still that legacy there in terms of return visits to D&G and partnerships that we've certainly forged in both a national and an international stage. If members are wanting a specific breakdown of the detail under the main headings, I'm quite happy to provide that out with this meeting.
Well, that was part one. Okay, I will simply say I think most members, I mean, I ran a wedding this year and I knew how many guests were coming because I actually demanded to know how many guests were coming. the time, and you work on a budget, and you decide who's going to come, and you organise yourselves properly. It's a large event. It's difficult to do. I managed to do it without an overspend. I rather expect the council, who've got people who are paid handsomely to run a thing tightly, to actually have got that right. I'll go to my second question, please.
Maybe I could respond to Councillor Maitland. You had the privilege, Councillor Maitland, of determining well in advance who was going, where they were coming from, and how long they were going to stay. We issued an open invitation across the Commonwealth. We had 280 odd people turned up, plus all the retinue of looker after us. I think we had started off thinking we might have 100 if we were very lucky. So we didn't have the privilege of saying we will invite 50 people, because you can't very well say to somebody from wherever they were coming from, I'm sorry, you can't come because we can't afford to pay for it. We were left in a situation where it was not as clean cut. I understand what Councillor Maitland's saying, and I, for one, am not very happy about the overspend. I know that. We had hoped we would cover it from other areas. It's not proved possible, simply because we are using tighter budget management and more transparent budget management. But I do take the point, but somebody had to balance up. Do we say no to someone coming from the Commonwealth, from Australia or Canada, you can't come because we can't afford it, and take the adverse publicity that was coming there, or try to absorb the cost? We will absorb the cost. We're telling you openly and transparently there was an overspend on it.
Second question. What about that?
Thank you, Chair. Part two over to me. A general comment in regard to both integration and community facilities is that as we embarked on year two of the process, this committee agreed that we extend and enhance the consultation period for both, because there was some significant challenges with management committees and with communities in terms of integration. So right at the start of the year, the timeline was increased, if you like, to make sure that we brought on board and undertook additional consultation with user groups and with management committees. Specifically in regard to community facilities, we then had a number of challenges in regard to capacity building with management committees to make sure we didn't hand over facilities that were then going to be creating a challenge and a difficulty in terms of the capacity of those communities and those management committees to take those facilities on. That took a little longer than we imagined. And secondly, the condition surveys and capital works to some of those properties that we made a commitment to do, again, to ensure that the property was handed to the community in a fit-for-purpose state, took longer to do than we anticipated. Having said all that, in terms of the community facilities, of the 9 facilities that were agreed as part of the programme for 14-15, we're now in a position where 7 of the 9 are nearing completion, and we are due to sign management agreements certainly within the current financial year. 2 of them remain sort of ongoing in terms of challenges. But we're moving forward on that one. Integration, remind members, I guess, that the savings are realised as a result of 2 elements of integration. Firstly, in terms of staffing, integrating staff across the disciplines that form part of the integrated facilities. And the second part is the buildings. And Councillor Scobie's referred to some of the works that were done the previous year at Stranraer to make sure that we then have a fit-for-purpose building that can allow for an integrated service to take place. In terms of staffing, we had some challenges with the joint trade unions initially to ensure that all staff were fully engaged in the process. That took longer than we'd envisaged, but we worked through that. And with the help and support of our joint trade union colleagues, we've resolved those matters. In terms of integration, staffing-wise, we're almost there in terms of the integration process and the matching process that we've put in place. In terms of the buildings and the properties, again, we've had some delays in terms of the condition surveys being undertaken and the capital works. And there are some integration projects that, because of the complexity and size and scale, there's probably 5 there that are not yet in a position to progress as we would have liked. And that's for various reasons. An example might be Kakubri in terms of the Johnson School and what we were looking to do in terms of integration in that facilities. But there are other issues and challenges in that regard as well. But we're certainly on track in terms of the staffing savings integration and the majority of facilities.
Well, so I'm receiving assurances that these savings, which were agreed, are going to be made. Is that right, Chairman?
We're working towards making those savings. I've given members in terms of I'm endeavouring to balance the books. That includes the savings. What I will say is that, notwithstanding the delays, these savings are sustainable year on year on year and will contribute towards the council's reducing budgets year on year thereafter. We do accept that perhaps we were over ambitious in relation to some of the savings we could make, particularly in terms of staffing. I'm pleased to say that we were able, by dint of negotiation, by dint of proper matching, not to shed any staff other than people who wanted to retire. So we have a situation where, and I was quite concerned about it in certain areas where we might find ourselves with members of staff going into a redeployment pool because the integration had meant that they couldn't get a post. We now have everybody who previously worked in any of these areas in a post. So that did take time, and perhaps we were over ambitious when we identified the savings in the first instance. And on reflection, I wouldn't be taking that kind of approach again. I've got to be honest with you and say I would be looking at a year-on-year approach rather than a big bang approach.
Thank you, Chair. It actually pays to be a bit later on, because if we need a wedding planner, I now know how to get one, which is... I'm saying if we need a wedding planner, Jane, we now know where to find one. I said if. I'm just going to refer back to 3.6 and also 3.12 that Councillors Geddes and Scobie both referred to. And I was to welcome Alex's assurance, and I know he did do a lot of work on this. But in real human terms, can somebody explain to me what the difference between a 0 hours contract and a as and when required contract is? It's a legal position, I appreciate that, but if you're that employee, you can't get a mortgage, you can't get a loan, because you have no definite income. So can somebody please explain to me how we deal with those members of staff and also those who are in part-time contracts, who are maybe contracted for 10, 12 or 16 hours and actually working 20 or 25 on a regular basis? Because whenever they go for a loan or they go for a mortgage, it's only worked out on what they actually get in their contracted hours. And if the contract is 0, and I'm not wanting to be emotive, Alec, right? 0, as and when required, if they're not what required that week, means 0. Now, I appreciate it's a plain words. I'm not trying to catch you out here. I'm talking about the real knock-on human effect on the staff. That's what I'm getting at here. So how can we actually deal with this? How can we be assured that when we look at the staffing structures, that we actually look at dedicated part-time staff who can work overtime up to a certain amount at the same rate they get, rather than just bringing people in on an ad hoc basis? It's about talking about staff morale and staff and leadership of the staff. I think that would actually go a huge way towards that.
I'm quite happy to give you the legal definition. I can't give you it off the top of my head, but I will provide the legal definition. I do understand what you're saying. We do not advertise a post saying, we would like you to come along and work for no hours or 25 hours or 3 hours a week. We advertise potential employment for people. The vast majority of people who take it on are likely to have another job. So we're not saying you are engaged, you can only work for the Dumfries and Galloway Council, you can't work for anyone else, and we will tell you what hours you work. We advertise on the basis that we require people who will from time to time be requested, if they're available, to fill in where we have sickness, to fill in where we have absences for whatever reason. These people are not employed on a 0-hour contract, they are employed as casual staff. Now, you can say that's a play on words, sir. The vast majority of them aren't dependent on we do not say, you can only work for us, and by the way, we will tell you what hours you work, whatever week it is. That is not how it operates. That's never how it is operated. So we do have a situation where we have also people who will apply for a job and work for 3 or 4 months in the summer, or over the Christmas period because they're doing a Santa Claus or they're working as in a grotto somewhere in Dumfries and town centre. These people come along, we don't say to them, that means you can't work for anybody else anywhere else. So we also have another lot of students who are employed as casual staff. And that's one of the issues we have. We have a load of students in the summer and in the winter. It's much more difficult to get people to come in to do casual hours when the universities or the colleges, or indeed the schools, are in operation.
Okay. I want to stop this debate on zero-hour contracts, etc., because it is not a matter for this committee, quite frankly. We have various other committees which employ people on casual contracts, right? We're getting right off the subject of this meeting. I think that is a matter that I will ask Mr. Haswell to refer either to the Employment Appeals Committee or the Policy Committee, whichever is the one that deals with our manpower policy. Because we're getting into areas of policy here that are no matter of this committee. I appreciate members' concerns, but we're getting way off the subject here. Councillor Driver.
Thanks very much, Chair, and I'm pleased Alex gave the assurance that the delivery of the action plan to bring the budget back into control is actually there. But I think there is a link coming back to what Councillor Geddes and what Councillor Scobie said with regards to the well-being of staff as well. And as part of that action plan to bring the budget into back into sync, I would just like the assurance that the communication with the staff is actually quite good on this, because there are certain things that happen where people send out rumours and there's all sorts of nonsense. So the communication with the staff has to be very important. And that will help the sort of well-being of understanding it.
That's part of the programme going forward. So I've got to say to you, I accept what you're saying. Perhaps there have been occasions when we could have been a lot more clever in our communications with staff. We are improving that, and that's part of the plan going forward.
Thanks, Chair. Just regards to the community facilities review, I would like to think that this can be accelerated now that we've got good practice being followed in the likes of Glen Ken's Community Centre, where we've got a project there where the community is very much bought into the scheme, where they're going to take over their community centre, and they've looked at how they're going to set up a trust and so on. I think the delays that have been involved there have been down to the surveys and the uncertainty of actually where the costs are going to be apportioned to wind and watertight or ongoing maintenance of the building. What I'm looking for is some assurance that the delays and these buildings that are potentially being passed over to the community, that the surveys and the like, which create some certainty in ongoing costs, these are going to be sorted out, because I feel that's one of the reasons these projects and the reviews have not taken place as quickly as they might.
I think I can give that assurance, sir. We flooded the market, quite frankly. We were expecting a very small number of people to survey not a lot of buildings. Some of the delays are not, however, down to surveys. Communities move at different paces. We will not hand a community building over to a community that's not ready to take it over, because there's little point in doing that, because they just then fold and the council's back where it started. We have had 2 members of staff who have been working constantly on this for nearly 18 months, and they are now achieving the goals that they set out to achieve. It's very difficult. At one point, this council had a policy of you either take the building over or we shut it. That changed subtly, and now we're in a position where we're negotiating and asking people if they'd be prepared to do it. And some communities are quicker to bite the bullet than others, and that's being honest. We do take the point about surveys, but we did flood the market, so that's basically what happened.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I've got a few small questions. I'm sure they'll be pretty easy to answer. I should just say, though, I'm reassured that the integration has gone at a pace which has maintained staff morale, which I believe is something HR looked to work into, and it's referred to in a later report. Just on the reserve not being available for the Commonwealth Youth Summit, the 40k, I was just wondering, that seems an odd situation, but I'd love to get a wee bit of clarity on that. Secondly, in 3.9, when it mentions the message to budget holders to ensure effective control, would you be able to sort of paint a picture of where that control needs to be most focused? Because I'm sure by now we'll be sort of starting to see, the areas where budget holders are sort of exceeding what they should be managing. And the other thing is, in terms of the timeline for making the savings, I appreciate there's capital costs that'll be rolled into 2015-16 for some of the facilities where the works are still to take place for integration. Is there an indication of how much is going to get carried over, especially in the likes of Moffat, for example, where the integration basically is not going to happen until after April? So if those could be answered, please. Thanks.
In terms of the service reserves, we required to use what reserves we had to balance the books. There was an anticipation that there would be a reserve, and there was a reserve built into the CCS budget. Because of an overspend or a projected overspend on the budget, we used service reserves to balance the books. So that's what happened to the service reserves. In terms of the ongoing budget monitoring, casuals is one area, supplies and services. The days of saving your money and buying a piece of kit at the end of the financial year are long gone. We have got budget monitoring in terms of income, in terms of how we go about our business. So basically, yes, we are looking for people to budget monitor. What we're saying to people is, do not use supplies and services budgets to mask the use of casual employees. Do not mask the use of casual employees to buy a piece of kit you need. So there are areas where it's down to just good housekeeping, and we're doing that. In terms of capital, I don't have the capital programme in front of me, sir, but the capital programme was approved by the Policy and Resources Committee, in fact approved by the full council in February, and the capital programme does make provision for slippage and taking things forward. So yes, it will move into the next financial year as necessary.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and thank you for those answers. I think just given the information, we're a bit more up to date today than we were at those recent committees. So, given that April, the new financial year is approaching, and we know we've got a clear picture of where work's going to be delayed, and the surveys are getting carried out, and all the rest of it. So, do we know yet how much it's going to be for the few facilities remaining?
I don't have that detail in front of me, but I can give it to Councillor Thompson and all other members. I just don't have that information in front of me just now, and I wouldn't like to pull a figure out of the hat. But the capital programme should give you line by line the detail of what the question you're asking. I'll get Colin to pull. Can you pull that off, Colin, and we'll send it out to members.
Thank you very much. I can move on to the recommendations. Recommendation 2.1, agreed. 2.2, 4, 5. Thank you all very much. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the find it, Service Review, Community Learning and Development. Mr. Haswell.
This is a result of a call for a report for a service review, and CLD members previously agreed the scope. You'll see there's been a considerable amount of detailed work undertaken by staff. I don't have anything to add to the report, sir. It does exactly what members asked us to do in relation to the CLD review, and we're in a position to take the issue forward. I've got Harry Hay here and Jamie Ferguson who will answer any detailed questions that members have.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Syme.
Thanks, Chair. We have great value in what CLD in our area especially, but if a constituents come and approach me having concerns about cuts in this deal CLD budget, could I give these people assurances that there will be no cuts in the services that are previously provided?
Thanks, Chair. The situation is that members will be aware that as part of the council budget moving forward, 160k was agreed as being a saving that will come out of the CLD service review. That's across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway. I fully appreciate that the services that CLD provide are much valued both by staff and by the customers and clients across the region. And what we are doing as a management team directly after this meeting is looking at the resources we have got left and then deciding in conjunction with users how best to deploy them. What I would like to say is that some of the high-profile services that have been suggested as coming to an end at the end of this financial year is simply not the case. Our priority is to deliver on a commitment to maintain as many of the valued frontline services as we possibly can, and as we move forward, what we'll try and do is ensure, working with partners, that resources are better deployed to better effects. It's not just about taking a budget out of CLD, it's about how we can work better in partnership with others to deliver similar outcomes. So I can certainly give members every assurance that the impact of this is going to be as minimal as we can make it.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Scobie, then Councillor Maitland, and Councillor Mark.
Chair, I'll break it into two sections so officials don't think it's too long to reply to, no matter what life they may have come from. Could I address the first point, Chair, in 3.14? Within community and customer service, CLD is delivering both by staff and within the term CLD, and it goes on to talk about, for example, colleagues in CCS and third sector external funding section. I take it this includes the Duke of Edinburgh as part of that, because then I come on to 3.25, where it refers to the consultation that has taken place in terms of the revised service. And it does say that CLD staff, key partners and stakeholders, and again, I would presume the Duke of Edinburgh is part of the stakeholders in terms of when we look at 3.19 from 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, then that's all enshrined in indeed what the Duke of Edinburgh delivers. The reason I am coming to this, Chair, we all received very late communication from the Duke of Edinburgh Award organisation, and indeed you, Chair, replied to that, I think, either this morning or late last night, just to reassure the Duke of Edinburgh Award organisation that there is no risk or no change to the structure, in that there will be a coordinator. Indeed, you make the point, Chair, that you have assured the national body that that is the case.
No, the director assured the national body.
Can we have the assurance, either from yourself, Chair, or from the officials, that that is indeed the case, that there is no effect on the Duke of Edinburgh organisation in Dumfries and Galloway, and that they will remain, and that their fears are not founded? That's my first point, Chair.
I don't know where the fears came from. What I would say is that I spoke personally with the director of the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme in the summertime about the Duke of Edinburgh Awards. I gave him an assurance in the summertime that this council is fully committed to running the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme in the same way as it is done in the recent past. What we have done, and there has been a misunderstanding, someone's perhaps misread the paperwork, there is no requirement to remove the coordinator's post. The coordinator's post will remain in place. What we have done is we have realigned the budget to make sure that the budget truly reflects where the money is being spent on the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme. For example, we have it in Newton Stewart, we have it in Stranraer, we have it in Castle Douglas. All we have done is to realign the budget. The budget remains in place. There is no question of the coordinator being removed from post or being asked to work in 4 different places, or whatever the coordinator determined was going to happen to him. I spoke with Barry Fisher, who's the director of the scheme, yesterday, and gave him that assurance. I also gave him it in writing. That is not part of this proposal. Where that information came from, I do not know.
Yeah, just to come back on that point, Chair, and then I'll move on. It's on 3.25, and that's within the consultation. As I said, the communication came late in the day. Where it came from, where the information came from, I do not know. But we definitely got 2, one from a person who has taken over the chair of whatever organisation, however it's made up, whether it's a regional organisation or broken into areas. But we did receive 2.
Maybe we can't help if other people misinterpret our data. It's down to that. There's nothing contained in there that ever said the job was at threat. Somebody reads our documentation and makes that assertion. Nothing we can do about it. The fault doesn't lie with the officers or the members. It lies with the people who read the document and can't understand it, basically. Perhaps if they inquire of the officers before they sent out their email claiming that jobs were going to be cut, they might have gone a lot better, quite frankly. Your next point, Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, I'm sure you're entitled to your own opinion, but you know the assurance has been given, or the reassurance has been given, however much you may want to put over that message in the manner that you do. Can I move on to the next point, Chair? Again, keeping on consultation, and that's to do with 3.19.5, learning and vulnerable and disadvantaged. In terms of the consultation, and however misinterpretation people put on it, can I get an assurance that we have gone out to consultation for vulnerable young people, those with learning difficulties, and that we are still able to deliver that service to these young people who very much need the service? That's my second point. On another point, I'll come back on.
Thanks, Chair. Absolutely, Councillor Scobie. I think the Council as a whole has made it quite clear exactly where its priorities are moving forward, and the whole purpose of community learning development is to try and give the most disadvantaged and the most vulnerable members of our community every resource and best start in life. So that's exactly what our focus is going to be moving forward.
Thanks for that reassurance, Chair. Can I move on to 3.5, where it refers to the challenge panel included, and there are a number of issues. I will not labour the point, Chair, in terms of Councillor Geddes has made it in the previous report, where 3.15 refers to the non-filling of vacancies, and I would hope that that practice will cease, where we do try and fill whatever vacancies there are. But moving to this in terms of what's referred to as 3.2 and the real thrust of the report as laid out in 3.21 to 3.27, particularly 3.27 to improve resources to provide strategic direction for CLD region-wide. And I think the point has been made on more than one occasion, just taking the Wigton Area Committee, where sometimes we are quite envious of the service delivery in the Mackers, reflecting that back on the RINS areas. So if the report as it is written is laying out here that we will start or be able to prioritise some of the service delivery at an area committee level, then I would welcome the report so that we do see the services and not just be envious of what's going on, but that there is a reflection of the area committee's priorities in terms of how they want to see this service delivered, if I could have that assurance.
That's the entire reason for the service review, sir. Members identified that services were provided on an historic basis. What we're looking to do in terms of the service review is bring services across Dumfries and Galloway where they're required, rather than have them there because they were there. And that's what the service review is all about. That was the scope that members gave us when we were given that scoping.
Councillor Maitland?
Yes, but I think there's a little bit of work, Chairman, to do before it ever gets anywhere near the area committees. I'm very grateful for this extensive piece of work because I think it's actually laid out the mismatch of resources in certain areas. I think it's actually quite clear and quite obvious that there is a mismatch. I will say that on the pages of 55 and 56, it's not absolutely accurate. I think things have been added up, apples and oranges have been added up, but in essence, I can say to you that the full-time equivalents involved in community learning and development across the piece go from Wigtonshire with 13.3 full-time equivalents. Kirkcudbright, Stewartry has 5 full-time equivalents. Nithsdale, including Upper Nithsdale, has 28 full-time equivalents, and Annan and Eskdale have 12.9. So I am grateful for the fact that this piece of work actually exposes the fact that something which we have realised through historic problems, which happened also in Wigtonshire, that there were vacancies taken and then not filled. And you'll see in the previous report, actually, that one of the vacancies that was taken, £46,000 out of the Stewartry, was an officer in CLD, which is balancing up the books in the whole of this service. And I would simply say that that's absolutely symptomatic of what's happening. So what I want to know before this ever gets anywhere out near the areas, which I totally agree with because it's up to each area to decide how it can work with partnerships that it has, I want to know what the overall strategy is going to be and how the resources are going to be transparently divvied up. Because we've made a commitment in the budget to have savings. You know, we've said we've got £168,000 worth of savings in a budget which is already overspent this year by £321,000. And so I want to know, before it ever goes out to the area, please, how that is going to be dealt with.
We are looking, the service review informs how we take things forward. We're now looking at taking things forward. We'll be looking at partnership working. We'll be looking at where specific requirements are. There's a big piece of work, as Councillor Maitland has said. I would not want to discuss individual circumstances with Councillor Maitland, but there are areas where we have identified the potential for making these savings already. They do not include a diminution in service. They do not include anybody being asked to work in 10 different places at the same time on the same day. We have identified areas. They do involve individual members of staff, and I would not want to deal with that in a public meeting before we've had the opportunity of addressing the issues with the staff concerned. As Harry Hay has said, he's got a series of staff meetings to undertake over the next few days, where we will provide reassurances with staff, and we will be looking at individuals. You mentioned one specific post. I don't want to go there. If you don't mind, Councillor Maitland, I'm quite happy to speak with you about that post offline.
Indeed, I'm not interested in the post either. It's simply been taken out of the budget. You know, it's absolutely in the public domain that it's there. It's been taken. So I don't think there's any problem with that. But what I want to know, please, is how are we going to make certain that each of the areas has the requisite resources that it requires? How is that going to happen? Transparently and obviously.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Maitland's absolutely right that the role of area committees in this process is absolutely crucial. Those elected members know their patches better than anyone, and I think what we need to do is look at the report itself. Simply gives a snapshot in time. That at the writing of the report, it gave an overview of how the current CLD specific resources are deployed across the 4 areas. We looked at a formula that is fairly well known across the region, which is the budget allocation of area committees, and applied that simply as an indication of what the same formula applied would look like, and that gave us an indication of how resources would be deployed thereafter. What we do not want to do is move resources away from one area where we are already receiving national, if not international, success stories, huge impact, etc., to the detriment of that area to another area. What we want to do is, working with the profile information that members will all be given in the very, very near future. It's going to be officially launched in March. The area committee, even before we get to the stage of coming back to say how do they want to deploy the resources they've got, we need to work with the area committees to say, based on robust factual information, what are the issues that area committee wish to prioritise on, and that will presumably range through the various vulnerable sections of the community to start with, and then it's a matter of prioritising. What we will then do is, with that information and with that area committee input, is come back and say, well, with the following resources, that perhaps makes effort to deal with some of the imbalance that's been demonstrated. How do you want to deploy those resources, and what type of performance information would you like to see, and what frequency, to try and make sure that you're fully aware of the impact of how those resources are being deployed. What we need to do, and what hasn't happened perhaps as successfully to date, is make sure that it's not just about what the CLD service within the council does. It's about how we can invest in more effective, sustainable partnerships, and we need to move away ultimately from what is traditionally known as direct delivery, although that in certain quarters still needs to happen, but we need to focus more on supporting others to deal with delivery. And maybe a good example of that, it was something that Councillor Scobie touched on in an earlier point, was that 4 or 5 years ago, you would never have had CLD-based staff working with other council staff to deal with local emergency situations, for example. But at the end of the day, it's about resilience, it's about capacity building, it's about confidence building, and rather than the council going out to rural areas, for example, to deal with emergency situations, we are working with them help themselves, and that's what this model is all about. So what I can assure Councillor Maitland is we want to put area committees at the centre of that, and we want to give them the fullest of information moving forward. And as Alex has already said, the outcomes of this service review is just a start. We fully acknowledge it's not the end of the process, but it's now given us robust information to move forward.
Councillor Maitland?
Very final point then. That's absolutely fine. I understand what is being attempted to be done, and I know what the problems are because we have got to deal with budget changes. But I still want to know how you expect an area to deliver on what we're being told we have to deliver statutorily, with no administrative support for that particular business at the moment. So I'm just looking to be absolutely certain that we will be able to see transparently that there will be an equitable level of resource across the areas. I'm not wanting to take from anybody, but you've got to recognise that it's not reasonable at the moment. And I remember when Wigtonshire was in this position, people really got very, very hot under the collar. It's a different, maybe my style is different, but I can assure you I'll come to the same action in the end if we are not being looked after.
Thanks, Chair. I can give Councillor Maitland that assurance, and I think as we speak there is an interview in the Stewardship to fill that very admin post, so hopefully that's a successful outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Martin and Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Just much the same as what Councillor Syme says. We've been getting concerns from constituents and others about this review. I'd just like an assurance that there's nothing in this review that would result in the closure of any buildings or facilities in this Dale area.
I can give that assurance, sir. What we've done is we've stripped out the revenue implications of running these buildings and spread them across, so there is no issue of any building closing. We are not looking at the Oasis, we're not looking at North West Dumfries Resource Centre, nor are we looking at the centre at Kirkconnell, looking at Councillor Syme. So there is no proposal within this to do that. This is a reallocation of resource, this is a better use of resource and a rationalisation of the resources we've got.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much. Just kind of refers to 3.5.7. I'm kind of intrigued about this virtual HR officer is. Maybe if we get an avatar up on the screen, it would help us. But no doubt, the director will have addressed such an important issue that there was no HR officer there, and it was done by email. I don't find that acceptable. This is, services to people, with some really quite profound needs, and also some very valuable services to the public. Should have been, I would have suggested somebody there. It should have been a priority for them. But I I'll leave that to Mr. Haswell to sort out. A couple of things here. I know Policy and Resources actually set the budget for area committees for, and I understand the way it was done, the population and SIMD and everything else. But this service also has some statutory obligations. How did we factor in the statutory obligations when we decided what the figures were going to be, or did we work purely on the calculations for area committee, which doesn't fund statutory obligations?
Thanks, Chair.
No, just to finish, yeah. That's the part there. And the other part, just to build on that fund, it's services, not buildings, people are worried about. Right? It's what actually happens in the building, not the fact the building's going to be open or shut. And who, what members of staff or what services are going to be affected. And we should also be looking at the outcomes or the current thing. I totally agree with Mrs. Maitland about the unfairness and there needs to be a rationalisation across the whole region. But that rationalisation has to be just that, rational, right? And just to base it purely on population, I would suggest it isn't rational at this moment in time. It needs to include the SIMD, and I would suggest the most up-to-date SIMD, not 2000 and whatever it is, down there, and the statutory obligations. Just to finish, before I let the officer come in, Chair, we're talking about outcomes. I had a delegation of young people who came to me yesterday who, I knew some of them 2-3 years ago, would never have had the confidence to speak to an elected member, would never have the confidence to do what they did. And that was a direct result of the input at one facility in Dumfries. Now, the service delivery isn't to them. The service delivery continuing is to the next generation of them, because they are the success stories, right? And they're the role models for the next part. So we need to be really, really careful here that we don't throw babies out with bathwater, if you'll excuse the phrase, because a short-term saving today might cost us a lot of money in the long term.
Thanks, Chair. Just before I bring Jamie in, who's our resident expert on the statutory and the legislative obligations of the local authority, the percentage allocation that was used is the one that's currently used to allocate the area committee discretionary budget. It does include population, it does include the index of multiple deprivation. Although it was produced in 2009 and agreed by committee in 2009, the figures have been checked, and changes, if you were to run the same percentage today, are marginally different. They have not changed a huge amount across the 4 areas. There's maybe pockets within an area that has changed more significantly, but if you look at the whole area committee area, the changes are not significant at all. And what we endeavour to do is just simply give a snapshot that if the same formula was used, that's what would come out of the end of the machine. Councillor Ferguson is quite right that community learning development needs to be about tangible outcomes, not just outputs. And the example he gave, I think, is a very good one. Over the last 3 years, in terms of our external inspection programme involving Education Scotland, we are actually in an improving situation. And if you've spent a week with that team, they come in and leave no stone unturned. That you can't just say we are, benefited X amount of the community. They need to ask for evidence, and we need to provide that evidence. I'll maybe hand over to Jamie, if that's all right, Chair, just to talk about the strategic guidance and the legislative responsibilities that we've got to take forward. That responsibility of the council, but at the moment being led by the CLD service on behalf of the council.
Try and give you a brief answer, Councillor Ferguson. Community learning and development nationally has statutory duties at the moment, and a key one of these is to provide a 3-year plan for what Scottish Government calls the CLD sector. Scottish Government at the moment fully recognises that CLD is about changing people's lives in the kind of way that Councillor Ferguson was referring to for individuals and communities. Our local authority is charged with producing a 3-year plan for the sector, and by the sector they mean everyone who's involved in CLD outcomes, regardless of their job title, including the third sector and including other council departments. So that's really statutorily what we're obliged to do. However, in terms of inspections, councillors will know that every time a secondary school is inspected in Dumfries and Galloway and elsewhere, concurrently what they call the learning community is inspected, and that's all the partners who may be involved in any CLD activity. We're under an obligation to coordinate the activities of those partners, whether we like it or not. And to do that, we have to self-evaluate with partners, we have to look at joint monitoring, and we have to look at joint outcomes with partners at a locality level. Part of the report is about ensuring that we have the resource in the right place to be able to do that, so that we can deliver outcomes for vulnerable people right throughout Dumfries and Galloway. And I think, early on we say we've got a wee bit skewed in that through vacancy management, if you like, in the past. I hope that answers in terms of the strategic brief.
Thanks very much. The answer was pretty much kind of expected, the answer, and the answer is a fair answer. My follow-on from it, though, Chair, is that where does this fit into the overall reshaping of the council, and where does the new 3-year plan that their statutory obligation is due to do, given the other processes ongoing, is putting this through today? In actual fact, I'm not for just putting this off for the sake of putting it off. What I'm suggesting here is that this CLD 3-year plan should also be part of the Chief's plan for restructuring the council, and also I would suggest part of it will be in the integration plan, because some of the adult learning stuff with people with learning disability will most certainly be covered by the integration as in the NHS and the local and third sector organisations. So my question here is, have we really explored, right, or bottomed out the implications of adopting this today, right? On are we then leaving the chief with a fait accompli, or the integration board a fait accompli, because they've both to finalise their deliberations?
We live in a dynamic world, so no, we're not presenting the Chief Executive's review with a fait accompli. The Chief Executive's review, as agreed by members in December, looks across the entire process of CLD, and as Jamie's put it very succinctly, it's not just because you've got the word CLD in your job title means you're a CLD and you do nothing else and nobody else can do it. CLD is a learning community across the piece. And yes, the Chief Executive is well aware of this report. This report, we cannot put this report on hold. We have a scope. We have a requirement to equalise it. We have a requirement to produce the 3-year plan by September. That 3-year plan will be produced. The Chief will be coming back to members, I think, on the 26th of March with a further report relating to his overall scoping of the council, his overall service review process, and that this takes account of that, and that will take account of this. There is no question of us going off and doing something on our own without any reference to the council as a whole body. Colleagues in education, colleagues in leisure and sport, colleagues across the council all have got an involvement with empowering our communities, making sure that our communities are fit for purpose and bettering people's lives. That's why we're in local government, sir.
Thanks, Alec. Thanks, Chair. I think part of the problem here is so emotive, and people are actually putting individuals against policy here. I think that's the big problem we've got, and I think the problem the officers are facing, because they're trying to look at a service as opposed to individuals or individual facilities, and look at it as a whole. So thanks for that very full explanation. So thanks, Chair.
Councillor McClung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll try and take the Director's previous advice and talk a bit slower so that we can get all the points in one and I don't have to repeat myself. Councillor Ferguson mentions how we're allocating the money. I understand what the officer's saying, that if you do the same calculation now, you will get much the same results. I will double check that one myself. However, the report that went to the corporate policy fully admitted that the SIMD was not the best way in which to identify especially rural deprivation in terms of either income and employment, as was stated in the report that went to corporate policy. I think it's maybe something that we should be looking at when we're doing this. We're also saying here that in 3.36, give direction and support to the development of locality partnership work. Can somebody please give me a very real assurance that there will be no central diktat about what the staff are actually doing in each areas? Sorry, when you centralise something, what works in Dumfries will not necessarily work in Annan or Stranraer or Kirkcudbright, or vice versa. The areas will have to be allowed to decide what is best for their areas. That sentence within 3.36 gives me worry. I have some other points, but do you prefer me to split it up into two, Chair?
Chair, thanks. I'll just come back on the SIM data. Councillor McClung's quite right. The issue was debated by Corporate Policy Committee. I think it was February 2009. There was a range of different views. There was a range of different options about how equity could be achieved in relation to the area committee budgets, with a whole range of different factors and weightings. And at that time, after the debate, that's what members selected. I can give Councillor McClung my background research that led to me to say earlier on that the changes haven't had much impact across the four areas. In terms of locality input, I think that hits the nail absolutely on the head, that whilst we've got a relatively small population in Dumfries and Galloway, we've got huge cultural differences, a huge range of different priorities and a huge range of different views. And what this work is set out to achieve is to establish a strategic framework that sets out parameters, but then gives it back to local communities who then hopefully become empowered and can directly see how their influences shape services. So absolutely, it can't quite clearly be a free-for-all. It's got to be within a sort of controlled environment, but what we're absolutely wanting is for communities and their elected representatives to be directly involved in how that happens. So I can also give that reassurance, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that. I would greatly appreciate the background, so as I can do my double checking myself, me and figures, you know what I'm like. As regard Appendix 1, in the details for option 2 and 4, there's a bullet point that states quite clearly some areas may experience a loss of historical resources while others receive additional resources. Yet, in the details for option 3, which by my reading will have probably exactly the same result, there is this warning isn't within the details for option 3. I began to feel as if somebody was trying to lead me by the nose by that one. It also mentions in option 1 that no rationale for the model as resources are not currently designed with demonstrable need based on profiling information. My question there was going to be, what profile information? I haven't seen any, and now we're being told that that profile information will be published in March. So really we are being asked to make a decision here on which option we're going to take. It's partly based on profile information that's not going to be published until March. I really don't think we should be basing any sort of choice on what option we're going to take on which one without the full information. And as regarding Appendix 4, it was nice to see the breakdown of staff for the 4 areas at the minute. However, we've got 4 options on the table. It clearly states that there will be, or there's probably going to be a reduction in staff, which will be done via ERVS. So we are going to lose staff. I would have liked to have seen another table, or another 4 tables in Appendix 4 that gave me the details of which staff would be in each area under each one of the options, so that I could safely do the calculations myself and what option was actually going to result in which outcome.
Maybe if I try for your first question, I think, in terms of the profiling information. The profiling information it's a longer term ambition for community learning and development, because what community learning and development needs to do is, as Harry was saying, CLD is about locality if it's about anything. It's about fully understanding what the needs are in a particular area. And Dumfries and Galloway is a great place for areas being completely different from each other. My area, if you like, is Annandale and Eskdale, and within Annandale and Eskdale, I can go from one settlement to another, and their needs the sort of projects that you need to run there, the folk in the area, the community groups, completely different. The data's completely different. We are about to get some fairly reliable, in fact, some very reliable information in terms of profiling for the 4 areas. And what the profiling information will give us is the stats. It won't give us what the needs are in that area. That needs to come through discussion. And that needs to come through discussion with local communities and with elected members as well. So when we get that information, we'll be able to hone the service a lot better in terms of what the challenges are and what can be delivered for CLD. The actual report is as it says, it's about looking at the allocation, and it's about that snapshot in time. That's what we've got at the moment. We haven't got the analyses in terms of the profiling data quite to the stage we'd like to have it.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we're then being asked to make a decision when the profile information isn't actually where we would actually like it at the minute. As I say, I'm not particularly happy about making a decision about what option we're going to take here when I don't have full information sitting in front of me.
The review is not dependent on the profiling, sir. The review is an overview of CLD services across Dumfries and Galloway. What we've said is that if this is agreed today, we will take this forward. There's some further work to do. We've agreed to engage with area committees in particular to make sure that what we're providing in terms of CLD is fit for purpose within their areas. The profiling is coming from the Crichton University and covers the entire area. It is not a profiling for CLD. It's a profiling of Dumfries and Galloway based on the 4 districts, and should give us some really good groundwork to do. This service review is not dependent on that profiling. As Jamie has said, we could take this forward without the profiling. The profiling will be a tool that we will use to inform what we bring to area committees, to enable the area committees, in the end of the day, in consultation with their communities, to determine what services we provide across Dumfries and Galloway. If I can just give you one, for example, between Stranraer and Newton Stewart. Currently, the Duke of Edinburgh scheme in Stranraer is delivered by teaching staff from Stranraer Academy with volunteers. In the Douglas Ute, we have 2 community development workers based in the school who assist with the Duke of Edinburgh award. 2 different methods of approach, but both achieve the same end. And as Councillor Ferguson said, what we're looking for here is outcomes, not outputs, and not necessarily someone actually sitting in an area simply because that's where they're based.
Thanks very much. Given that this work's been done by the Crichton Institute, etc., what kind of information is going to be in the profile information?
Thanks, Chair. As Alex said, whilst the profile information has been, the coordination of it has been led by my team. It was actually the area framework team that led it. So it's not a CLD service document, it will be a council document. And every council department, every community planning partner from health, fire and rescue, police, the voluntary sector, will be able to use this robust data to help inform investment and service planning. I'm quite happy to share that the launch of the documents are in March next month. All elected members will be invited in their own patch to attend that session. The information will be given to them in a way that they can understand, hopefully, how it's going to influence everything from their area committee discretionary awards, how they're going to look at performance reports as they come forward, how they're going to deal with the issues that face their communities, and it covers everything from your basic demographic, employment, health issues, teenage pregnancy and what that means, school data, education data, the natural environment, tourism, business, etc. So it gives probably, I would say, the most robust overview of what goes on in each patch that we've had for quite some time. As Alec mentioned, Crichton Institute delivered it, so we had a team of research professors actually producing it for us. We obviously monitored to make sure that what they came up with is consistent with the brief. So it's not just a CLD document, it's something for all community planning partners to use. And I'm certainly very confident that when they get launched next month, it will be a document that doesn't just sit on a shelf. It will get used to help inform future decisions moving forward.
Councillor Tuckfield.
Thank you. I have been trying to get in for some time. What I want to say is I came with a view today and a tremendous amount of concerns. They haven't been allayed. I feel that what would have been much better for all the members involved here today would have been a briefing, a seminar, much more in-depth than what we've got here. Many of the questions have not been answered. Certainly, I'm interested in profiling. I'm aware of many of the problems that we've talked about today within our communities. After all, we are local members, so we are local people. I'm not totally satisfied that all my concerns have been responded to. And I would be actually for moving that we do not accept this report today, and that we wait until all the information on our communities is available to us, that we can actually dissect it and be aware of all the intricacies within our communities.
I mean, you're saying that you've got concerns, but you haven't explained what your concerns are.
My concerns are that we will be making a decision for a long-term changes within community and learning without fully understanding all the implications for our communities.
So what we're setting out in this document is within the scope that members gave us. What we're basically asking members is to look at a way forward. We're suggesting that we go to area committees. If the area committees want to dissect it and have community meetings to discuss it, we're very happy to facilitate those. I don't think that with the best will in the world, I can produce a document that would address every concern that every individual has, because people tend to look at things very much from their personal perspective. We've already had examples of that we've managed to allay the fears that individuals have had. I would really like to say to Councillor Tuckfield, we are on a journey here. This is a dynamic document. It's a base document to start taking forward CLD into the future. We have major legislation coming down the hill. We've got to be in a position to address that legislation. We've got to be in a position to ensure that we're getting the right outcomes for our communities. We can only do that in consultation with the communities. We have a document that deals with a very narrow part of what is the community learning experience across Dumfries and Galloway. It's a start document, nothing more, nothing less. I don't think that we could produce a document that would cover every eventuality. We initially started with a very wide-ranging scope. We've narrowed that down in view of the fact that the Chief Executive and this Council have already agreed that they're going to do a major refocusing. We may find, and it's not for me to determine, that will be for members to determine, we may find that the youth part of CLD is actually in a different service. Just because you've got the word CLD in your job title doesn't mean to say that you're the only person who can do CLD. We may find, because of the adult situation, as Councillor Ferguson has said, I don't know how integration will eventually affect the adult services. We do know that in terms of community resilience, in Wigtown in particular, we have done one hell of a lot of work with local communities, and we've got some of the most resilient communities in Scotland now, and I can evidence them. Dromore, Sorby, Garliston, I know them all. We know the people who deal with them. We know the individual member of staff who has got a rapport with the community. So we are doing a lot of work. I don't think I can produce a document which will cover every eventuality, but if Councillor Tuckfield would like to tell me what our major concerns are, as members have been doing round the table, I'm quite happy to endeavour to address them today.
Then perhaps, with your leave, I could actually state, we have, yes, community resilience in Wigtownshire, and it's very successful, but it's very dependent on the officer and her charm to get things done. What concerns me is that more and more we're pushing things onto communities, and the demographics of particularly my area are such that we have an ageing and much older population. We have very few young people in many of the very rural areas. And so the more that we tend to push on to communities, and it is pushing things on to communities, though it is part of the agenda, the more concerns I get from people, such as we've had community councils not wishing to join the federation and being quite open about it. Another layer of bureaucracy. You may not understand exactly where I'm leading to, but it is more and more pressure for very few people in communities to cope with all the changes.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what we're saying in this document, quite frankly. We take Councillor Ferguson, then Councillor Driver, and then we'll try and tease it to a close.
Thanks, Chair. I'm kind of intrigued about this new wonderful profile that's been commissioned, because we currently have profiles which have been in place for quite some time. And I know that from my time before I was a councillor, because I contributed towards the maintenance of that, as did some of the officers in the room who are nodding their head. So we have got some basic data. Right? We have got and yes, they will need to be updated. I appreciate that. But even if the old profiles had been brought forward to give us an indication, we would have laid a lot of fears here today. So maybe it's all very well been smart in hindsight, Harry, and I'm no knocking you for that. But if we'd had that information, it might have been more helpful.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, this report for us is a service review. It's where we are at this point in time. This point in time, we need to look forward to how we're going to deliver CLD. Now, we as elected members are actually part of CLD as well, because we actually need to make sure that the community learning and development process goes forward to make sure they have what is needed in our particular areas. We are where we are, which is written down in this service review, exactly where we are today. There are options to take that forward. And I think every member that's actually spoken has said quite clearly that they know their patch. And the best way to do it is take in locality basis. So taking forward this service review, and I think Alex said we're on a journey, we're on the first step of a journey going forward. I think that's absolutely right. Things will change. You don't just go from A to B in a straight line. You go back and forward and reverse and forward and all that sort of thing. I'm sure Willie will be quite clear about that side of things. So I think we need to take this forward, and we need to take it forward based on what the needs of the locality actually are. And the best way to do that is by taking forward in option 3. Now, I understand the profile and side of things and the concerns, but that's an overall arching document that's going to cover the part of the changes within the whole of the council. Within the CLD, I want to make sure that partners are actually helping deliver that service to communities, to young people, to disadvantaged people, to unemployed people, that we actually move forward now. Holding this particular thing back is going to hold that service back, delivering on the changes that are required now. So I would suggest we go forward with option 3 on this particular service review.
Okay, I think we'll move to recommendations now. 2.1, we've done a review. 2.2, select and agree. I'm sorry, I've already said we're moving on. 2.2, select and agreed preferred option for implementation. Now, I've had
clarification.
I'll give you
I understood Councillor Tupfield and put a motion on the table, and there may be a seconder for that where indeed she was expressing major concerns. Part of that is, again, that has been alluded to, and Archie alluded to as well, is to start to consult with the local area in terms of how we do take this forward on the journey. So, it might not be appropriate.
That's my point, Councillor.
Yeah, but Councillor, I understood. I just want the clarification that Councillor Tupfield put forward a motion to defer the issue.
I did, indeed.
Thank you, Chairman. My understanding is that Councillor Tuckfield raised concerns in relation to the fuller implications for communities. I don't believe that she moved to defer. She didn't get a seconder, but more importantly, the officer clarified that the review met the scope, was clearly a journey, and on that basis there was sufficient information before members today to take decisions in terms of the options, but more importantly, acknowledging that the position will continually change in light of changing profiles and information, and the CLD service will take full account of these. Stage one of that will clearly be the review profiles that have been talked about, but also within the Council and the wider implications, the Chief Executive's review of the Council's management arrangements.
So now we'll come to the decision-making part, and that is what select and agree a preferred option. The members wish to do so. And I think Councillor Dryburgh, do you wish to move that motion, Councillor Dryburgh?
I'm happy to move option 3 on this one, Chair.
Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there an amendment? Councillor McClung?
I'm quite happy to move an amendment that we don't select and agree a preferred option, and my reason is that we're ruling out one option because of this profile that's going to appear in March. So we're choosing an option where we don't have full information.
I would want to clarify that, Chairman. The profile is mentioned there as being one of the tools that we'll use moving forward. The profile is not about CLD. This Council agreed through the Policy and Resources Committee that would engage the Crichton University or whatever it is to undertake a profiling of Dumfries and Galloway. That doesn't just cover CLD, it covers issues that will affect how we treat with the roads, how we treat with flood schemes, how we treat with everything. It is a profile of Dumfries and Galloway, not just relating to CLD. So I wish I hadn't mentioned the profile in the report. Being perfectly honest with you, it does not affect what's going forward. What does clearly affect what's going forward is, one, the fact I've got legislation coming down the line as fast as it will come at me, and I need to be in a position to address that legislation. This report, through option 3, enables the Council to address the legislation. 2, it takes account of potential changes on the way forward. 3, it involves what I had understood all members wanted to involve was local communities and local area committees in the eventual decision-making process. 4, it enables us to look at a snapshot in time as to CLD delivery across Dumfries and Galloway and how we can look at addressing historic anomalies. And 5, it enables me to reassure staff, taking back to the stress factor, it allows me to reassure staff who've been working on this for months that their work has been acknowledged by this Council and their suggestions to this Council are being taken forward in the sure and certain knowledge that things will change as time goes on. I'm sorry, I don't like to be saying to a member, if you're founding an amendment to defer consideration of an issue on the basis of a very small part of it, I would ask you to seriously consider what you're asking in this respect. The profiling does not adversely affect any of the recommendations.
I'll quote from the stuff in Appendix 1 for option 1. No clear rationale for model as resources are not currently aligned. Page 28, second bullet point. No clear rationale for model as resources are not currently aligned with demonstrable need based on profiling information. You're telling us that this profile rules out option 1. That's what you're telling me.
Sir, we're telling you we're ruling out option 1 because option 1 is to do nothing and to continue what we've been doing. And what I'm saying is there's no rationale to continue what you've been doing. It's based on history. It's actually saying option 1, as I understand it, is status quo. We continue to do what we do. We continue to have the same level of service delivery across the areas rather than reprofiling and looking at it. That's what that particular piece of advice is to members. What we're saying is if you do nothing, we'll continue to run it, we'll make the saving, but you will continue to have members who take the view that there are anomalies across Dumfries and Galloway and that there's not an equality of provision. The only way you can get an equality of provision is to look at the areas and determine what is required in the areas. And that's what we're putting up to members and that's what we're offering members.
I have absolutely no problem with an equality of service across the area. My amendment, motion, whatever you want to call it, is I do not wish to make the decision until I have the full information. And the profile was mentioned, and it was said that it was being based on the new profile. I'm not 100% against any of the options. I want the full information before I choose the option. I'm sticking to my guns.
I'm happy to accept that. If you're moving deferment, I'll accept that as an amendment. Have I got a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion before me, I have an amendment. The motion is option 3. That's been duly seconded, and I have an amendment duly seconded, and move to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. The Chairman's clarified the terms of the motion and the amendment. We'll go to the vote. Councillor McCottery.
Motion.
Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Carson.
Motion.
Councillor Dryborough.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor McClung.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor Marshall.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl. Present. Councillor Scobie.
Amendment.
Councillor Syme. Councillor Tate.
Motion.
Councillor Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield.
Amendment.
Councillor Groom. Apologies.
Amendment.
Confirmed. The decision is the motion has 8 votes, the amendment has 6. Therefore, the motion is carried. The decision of the committee is to select option 3.
And okay, move on to the next recommendation, and that's to agree the timeline. Councillor Maitland.
Chairman, I have no difficulty with the timeline, except that I don't think there is a specific timeline for when this committee looks at how savings and the changes are about to be made. I think it's important that it comes back to this committee. The deadline is the 15th of September, I think, or September, to get everything done and clear. I think this committee has a locus in looking at the overall picture. When will that happen?
Chair, yeah, what has already been mentioned, we have got the statutory obligation to have a CLD plan for Dumfries and Galloway, and at the moment that leadership falls with us. We've already established that cross-agency group. There's a programme of meetings with very specific tasks that we need to do to deliver on that plan, and I will ensure that the document with input that gives all that level of information comes back to this committee prior to it being finalised.
Happy with that? Okay. That we take a 5-minute comfort break because there's people still out there, and we've got another couple of matters. So 5 minutes. We'll be back here 12:25. Dismantling project. Ewan Green here. Anything to add, Ewan?
No, nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Any queries? Councillor Dryborough.
Chair, I'm just looking at 3.4 with the, as part of the decommission process, site stakeholder group exists, and looking at the other agencies within there. Now, it's got nuclear development agency. Is it not nuclear decommissioning authority? Just for making sure that that's actually correct within the report.
Okay. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I hope this is in very short compass. We have on the, I think it's Appendix 1, there's no indication, a letter here from the site stakeholder group that clearly is intimating, that we believe under the current proposal that there are virtually no socio-economic benefits in the local area communities. I would see this as an endorsement that we do not accept the proposal from the presentations that were made here at a seminar rather, and that we just say that no, we will not take any part of it. Happy to move, Chair.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. Like Councillor Scooby, I'm less than happy at that presentation because we got a commitment that day that we would get information sent to us. I'm still waiting. I just hope they deliver the submarine bits quicker, a bit more efficiently than they do their promises.
Councillor Groom.
I'm quite happy to second Councillor Scobie on that.
Yep. Anybody otherwise minded? No. Members happy to agree that. Thank you all very much. We will now move into private session. Motion to exclude the public. Thank you.